Welcome to Bedtime Horror, your portal to scary stories. A few summers ago, I decided to take a break from the hustle and bustle of city life and booked an Airbnb in the serene countryside. The listing was a charming farmhouse nestled amidst rolling hills and picturesque landscapes. It seemed like the perfect place to unwind and escape from the daily grind. Upon arriving, I was greeted by the host, Mr. Turner, a polite, elderly man who handed me the keys and gave me a brief tour of the property. Everything looked quaint and cozy until he mentioned one peculiar detail: the basement was strictly off-limits. Mr. Turner explained that it was undergoing some renovations and was not safe for guests. I didn't think much of it at the time and thanked him for the warning. The first day was idyllic. I spent my time exploring the countryside, walking along meandering streams, and basking in the warm sun. Wildflowers dotted the fields, and the distant mountains provided a breathtaking backdrop. It was the perfect escape from the concrete jungle I called home. As evening descended on the farmhouse, I prepared a simple dinner and retired to the cozy bedroom. The countryside was alive with the chirping of crickets, and the soft rustling of leaves outside my window was like a lullaby. I fell asleep with a sense of contentment, feeling that I had made the right choice. But on the second day, things took an unsettling turn. During the day, I decided to take a hike in the nearby woods, following a trail that wound through dense trees and offered glimpses of the countryside beyond. It was a peaceful outing, and I returned to the farmhouse tired but satisfied. As night fell, I once again settled into bed. That's when I first heard it, the faint, irregular scratching noises coming from below. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it might be some nocturnal animal outside. But the sounds grew louder and more persistent, like the scraping of metal against stone. It was as if someone or something was trying to get my attention from the depths of the farmhouse. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. Yet, the sounds persisted, echoing through the farmhouse. My heart raced as I realized that whatever was causing these noises was not outside, it was inside, beneath me. I decided to check with Mr. Turner about the noises in the morning. However, when I tried to contact him, my calls and messages went unanswered. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. A sense of unease settled over me, but I tried my best to push it aside. The third day arrived, and I couldn't shake the unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. During the day, I decided to explore the countryside further, hoping to distract myself from the growing sense of dread. I followed a trail that led me to an old, dilapidated barn on the edge of the property. The place had an eerie aura about it, and I couldn't help but feel watched as I ventured inside. However, I found nothing unusual and eventually returned to the farmhouse. As night fell, my anxiety grew. The noises from the basement had become a constant, unsettling presence. It felt as though they were creeping up from below, invading the farmhouse. Each scratch and echo of footsteps sent shivers down my spine. Sleep was impossible, and I spent the night tossing and turning, clutching my blankets in fear. As the first rays of dawn broke, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to leave this place. I hastily packed my bags and, with trembling hands, locked the farmhouse door behind me. The peaceful countryside I had hoped for had turned into a nightmare. The days had been serene, but the nights had become a descent into terror. I couldn't fathom what might be causing those haunting sounds in the basement, and Mr. Turner's disappearance only added to the mystery. It wasn't until later, when I shared my experience with the locals, that I discovered the chilling truth about the area. The farmhouse had a dark history, and several people had mysteriously disappeared there over the years. The mystery of the basement and Mr. Turner's sudden disappearance still haunts me to this day. It serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes, the tranquility of the countryside can hide secrets far darker than one could ever imagine. A few years back, my partner, Sarah, and I decided to embark on a much-needed vacation to Las Vegas. We were eager to escape the monotony of our everyday lives and immerse ourselves in the glitz and glamour of the city that never sleeps. Instead of booking a conventional hotel, we thought it would be an exciting adventure to stay in an Airbnb. After browsing through numerous listings, we stumbled upon a quaint cabin nestled just outside the bustling Las Vegas Strip, an alluring promise of a quiet retreat amid the neon lights and cacophony of the city. Our first evening in the cabin was a blend of excitement and anticipation. We unpacked our bags, explored the cozy interiors, and discussed our plans for the days ahead. The prospect of visiting famous casinos, taking in live shows, and savoring the city's renowned buffets filled us with exhilaration. As the clock ticked away, we decided to call it a night and rest up for the adventures awaiting us. With our heads nestled on soft pillows, we began to drift into the realm of dreams when it happened. An eerie, uninvited sound pierced the tranquility of our surroundings. At first, I dismissed it as the innocent mischievousness of wildlife, perhaps a raccoon or a curious coyote rummaging through the nearby trash cans. But the noise, instead of fading into the background, grew in intensity and persistence. My partner and I exchanged puzzled glances in the dim moonlight filtering through the cabin's windows. We could not ignore the palpable sense of unease that had descended upon us. What should have been a peaceful night had turned into something inexplicable and alarming. Summoning my courage, I decided to investigate the source of this strange, rhythmic banging noise that reverberated through the cabin walls. I inched my way out of bed, careful not to make a sound that could alert any potential intruder. As I tiptoed toward the window, my heart pounded in my chest. With bated breath, I gently pushed aside the curtains and peered into the night. There, under the faint glow of the moon, I made out the chilling silhouette of a person standing just a few yards away from our cabin. Their back was turned to us, and they appeared to be engaged in some unsettling activity. In their grasp, they held an object that they were forcefully scraping against the wooden walls of our cabin, creating a spine-tingling, metallic screech. A sense of dread washed over me as I realized that this was no ordinary occurrence. Panic welled up inside me, and I hurriedly whispered to Sarah, "Someone's out there, trying to get in." Her eyes widened with fear, and we both knew we had to act swiftly to protect ourselves. While Sarah remained by the window, her eyes trained on the intruder, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. As I spoke in hushed tones with the dispatcher, the banging and scraping outside continued relentlessly. It was as if the very night itself conspired to torment us with these unsettling sounds. Minutes stretched into an eternity as we waited for the police to arrive. Every second felt like an hour, and our imaginations ran wild with horrifying scenarios of who this intruder might be and what their intentions could be. The world outside was cloaked in darkness, and we were alone, isolated in our cabin, with an unknown threat lurking just beyond the walls. Finally, the distant wails of sirens pierced the night, growing louder as they approached our location. Miraculously, the intruder seemed to hear them too, for the noises ceased abruptly. The once frantic banging and scraping transformed into a haunting silence. We remained hidden and silent as the police cars pulled up to our cabin, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow on the surroundings. The officers wasted no time, springing into action as they surveyed the area meticulously, searching for any sign of the mysterious intruder. Despite their efforts, there was no trace of anyone lurking outside. It was as though the night had swallowed them whole, leaving us with nothing but the unsettling echoes of our encounter. The police assured us that they would increase patrols in the area, and they advised us to stay vigilant. With heavy hearts, we returned to our bedroom, barricading the doors and windows as an added layer of protection. Sleep was a distant memory that night as we lay huddled together, our thoughts plagued by the enigma of the intruder. As dawn broke, we were still gripped by fear and uncertainty. The rising sun did little to dispel the shadow of that harrowing night. We knew that we couldn't endure another night in that cabin, and our decision was unanimous. We needed to cut our trip short and seek accommodations closer to the city. As we packed our bags and prepared to leave, a multitude of questions lingered in our minds. Who had been outside our cabin that night, and what were their intentions? The unsettling encounter had left an indelible mark on us, a chilling reminder of how quickly a peaceful getaway could transform into a bone-chilling ordeal. A couple of years ago, I decided to visit a charming little town for its annual fair. It was the kind of fair you see in movies, with colorful stalls, thrilling rides, and the sweet aroma of cotton candy wafting through the air. Excitement bubbled within me as I eagerly planned my trip, and I couldn't wait to explore the festivities that awaited me. To make my stay more memorable, I opted for an Airbnb that was just a short walk from the fairgrounds. The property, described as a cozy cottage, seemed perfect for my weekend getaway. The online photos showed a charming, rustic retreat surrounded by a lush garden. It was as if the cottage had been plucked from the pages of a storybook. On the evening of my arrival, I checked in and settled into the quaint cottage. The warm ambience and rustic decor immediately put me at ease. As I glanced out of the window, I could already hear the distant sounds of laughter and excitement drifting from the fair. My first night in the cottage was peaceful and uneventful. I fell asleep to the gentle rustling of leaves outside, a soothing lullaby that welcomed me to dreamland. However, on the second night, my peaceful retreat took an unsettling turn. It was as if the whole world had shifted from a vibrant carnival to a spine-tingling horror movie. As I lay in bed, I began to hear peculiar noises emanating from the backyard. It started with soft rustling, like someone shuffling through leaves. I attributed it to a stray animal, perhaps a raccoon or a curious cat. Yet, as the minutes passed, the noises escalated into something far more disconcerting. Footsteps, unmistakably human, echoed just beyond my window. My heart raced, and a chilling sensation washed over me. I summoned the courage to creep out of bed and cautiously approach the window. Drawing the curtains aside, I peered into the darkness, my eyes straining to discern any figures in the moonlight. To my astonishment, there was no one there. The backyard appeared empty, and the eerie sounds had abruptly ceased. I couldn't fathom what I had heard. Had my imagination played tricks on me? Was it possible that my anticipation of the fair had led me to conjure these unsettling noises? I decided to put it down to my overactive imagination and return to bed, although sleep remained elusive that night. The thought of someone lurking just outside my window had unnerved me to the core. The following day, I continued with my fair adventures, trying to put the previous night's events out of my mind. The vibrant atmosphere and joyful festivities helped me regain a semblance of normalcy. It was a day filled with laughter, cotton candy, and thrilling rides that temporarily washed away my fears. However, as night fell once again, the dread I had felt the previous evening began to creep back. I knew I couldn't dismiss it as mere imagination this time. The noises returned, echoing through the backyard like a haunting refrain. Terrified and desperate for answers, I dialed the local police, hoping they could shed light on the situation. I explained my predicament. My voice was trembling with fear and frustration. The dispatcher assured me that they would send an officer to investigate. Minutes felt like hours as I waited anxiously for the police to arrive. The eerie sounds continued, each one sending a shiver down my spine. What was happening just outside my window? Who could be responsible for this torment? Finally, the arrival of the police car outside brought a glimmer of hope. I rushed to the front door to meet the officer, explaining the situation in a hurried, anxious manner. The officer nodded and, with a flashlight in hand, began to search the backyard meticulously. To my bewilderment and growing unease, the officer reported that there was no one there. No signs of intrusion, no footprints, Nothing to explain the inexplicable sounds that had plagued me for 2 nights. I was left feeling utterly alone and terrified. The police offered to patrol the area throughout the night, but the fear had already taken root in my heart. The fare I had eagerly anticipated had become a nightmare, and the cozy cottage I had chosen for my stay now felt like a prison. As the sun began to rise, I decided I couldn't stay in that Airbnb any longer. I hastily packed my bags, left the keys on the kitchen counter, and got into my car. With a pounding heart, I drove away from that unsettling place, feeling relieved that I was finally leaving the eerie events behind me. But as I glanced back in the rearview mirror, a shiver ran down my spine, and I couldn't help but wonder who or what had been lurking in that backyard.